and we will, if we could keep the conversation down. Guys,
Excuse us?
Is there no way out?
Excuse us?
I don't think we legally can. Guys, if we could have the conversation outside, just, we have the recording going now. Or you're welcome to say. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, we will go on to 8B, which is a public hearing for easement vacation for Walcott Glen.
Perfect.
Sure, I've got a couple slides just to show what it is. As part of Walcott Glen, they purchased land that was part of Ravinia 11th, and they're developing that as part of their project. And so they are deeding new easements, and these old easements are no longer needed. If you go to the next slide, just for reference, this is the south end of Ravinia 11th. There are 4 generally easements that are being vacated, and the parcels are being replatted as part of Walcott Glen. They are no longer needed, so staff does recommend approval of the resolution on the next slide, vacating those easements.
Perfect. Any questions?
And just for clarification, the map or that's in staff's report is in the incorrect parcel? This is the parcel closest to Hackamore. It should be the parcel on the north side.
Yes, I apologize.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, there's this map, which is accurate.
Yep.
Okay. If there's not any questions, I will go ahead and open the public hearing.
Yes. Anyone wanting to speak in the public hearing in the audience can come to the podium and state your name and address. Anyone joining us virtually can press *9 or click reactions and raise your hand if you're joining us on a smartphone or other electronic device. Mayor and council, at this time, no one's raising their hand.
Okay. Then I will go ahead and entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, any discussion on the item? Otherwise, I will entertain a motion to approve Resolution 2022-140.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. On to 8C, we will have the public comment opportunity I talked about at the beginning for the rest of the items in 8, so 8C, D, and E.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Anyone who wants to speak on those 3 items, which would include the O'Brien concept plan, I did have a question in the chat about that. This would be the time you'd want to speak. If you are in the audience, come to the podium and state your name and address. Otherwise, you can click raise your hand under the reactions tab. I did have someone who did say that they wanted to speak virtually, but
Are they still on?
they're still on.
Okay, well, let's go into 8C, and if they end up raising their hand
Mr. Mayor?
when we get to it, yeah.
Would it be okay to close the door, or are we
don't-
not able to?
I
We
don't know
wouldn't
if
be
you
able to
can.
close the door, but we certainly could ask if they could just.
Of course, it's so
Thank you.
cold out.
Can we get some clarity on that from the League of Minnesota Cities? Because I've been to other city council meetings where they actually shut the door, but if the door is open, that the public can open it,
We
it's
can
fine.
certainly
Maybe
get
if there's a
some-
sign or something stating.
Maybe we could put a sign up. We could look into that. I could work with the city attorney just to.
I mean, it doesn't
That'd be
happen
nice.
that often, but.
But it would be nice for people to have a good place to go discuss after.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, so let's go into 8C, and then if they end up raising their hand or coming back to it and want to speak, we'll let them ahead of the item.
I do have a couple slides for this purpose, so. This is a development rights appeal on the next slide. We need a clicker, I could just slide, you don't have
No,
to do
we're
all
good.
the things, but. Gerald Paulson requested an evaluation of the development right on 22101 County Road 30. The request is he would like to be able to subdivide the property that he owns, which has no development rights today. When the development rights appeal process, the burden of proof is on the applicant to show that the map is wrong. There was no information provided that it was wrong, simply that he would like that. So we dug into the history of the site. The 113.5 acre farm was subdivided in 2000. That's the outline. That was what the property looked like prior to the subdivision. There were 11 development rights assigned, and one of those was for the existing farmstead. The property then was subdivided, and 10 development rights were assigned to the large parcel, and just the one remained on Mr. Paulson's 20-some acres. Since then, the larger parcel has been sold outside of the property and is owned by another landowner. The next slide just shows the 2000 development rights map and the 2020 development rights map. So you can see it was carved off, and the smaller parcel in the upper left is Mr. Paulson's property. And as council knows, the development rights map is something, development rights program, excuse me, is something unique to Corcoran. It was developed in the mid-'80s, and there was a reset in the mid-'90s, but generally, it's one development right for every 10 acres on a paved road, which this is a county road to the north, so that's how their development rights were set. There's nothing that suggests the development rights were improperly applied. It was the total of 11, and 10 went to the new development and 1 there. I was not here at the time. There's nothing in the file about how those were assigned, but that is what went on to the development rights map. Certainly I should note that the staff report was silent on it. Usually we try to write how the development rights are getting assigned. The staff report didn't specifically do that. So the only history I have is that after the 2000 subdivision, the development rights map was updated and showed 10 on the new parcel. The city, again, cannot simply grant development rights. You need to show that there's an error in the map. There is no way to take a development right from the parcel that has 10 that was recently purchased by someone else with an understanding that there were 10 development rights and reassigning it. So there simply isn't a way to create a new development right to grant to the landowner. So staff does recommend denial of the request for a development rights map amendment by adopting Resolution 22-137.
Okay. Any questions on that for staff?
Does the applicant know that they could potentially try to buy a development right from a neighboring parcel? I know that's happened several times in the last couple of years. Are they aware of that option?
I spoke to the applicant a couple of years ago, and we did talk about that. Whether he does now know that, I don't know, and I don't know if he's here tonight.
But certainly something we could
Yeah.
convey.
But, so I have spoken to him once about that.
I don't
He had reached out when the Paulson Farm subdivision came in to ask that, and we did have a conversation about that
Gotcha.
at that time.
I think you said it, Kendra, everything was silent, so it was originally a 113 acre farm,
Correct.
and they kept 20 some odd acres on the original farmstead, I'm gonna call it.
25.
So they have the one right, and the home is built. I think in the comments, they wanted to rebuild the home or put a new home up and then sell another parcel off and stuff, but it's been the same owner all along. So when it was split to 1 and 10 when it was divided out, and then everything happened, and now those 10 are owned by someone else, so, okay. And then my other question is, I am just below the number 3 on this parcel, or on this map, and is there any conflict for me to put input in on this? I'm that flag lot looking thing below there. There's no issues for me to be part of this conversation.
You directly, so.
No, I don't
Okay.
think.
You don't
I
have a financial
wouldn't believe
interest.
so. There's
All
no
right.
financial interest.
Just wanted to make sure, and thank you very much.
Anything else? I would agree that maybe the staff should reach out and let them know about what other options may be. Sounds like probably maybe they did know at one point, but just a reminder.
You can send an email.
Perfect. Other than that, I will entertain a motion to adopt Resolution 2022-137, I believe.
So moved.
Denying the amendment.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
8D, want to double check if the,
I have sent them also an email.
Perfect.
So I have not them raise their hand, but certainly if they do or send a.
Sounds good. If it
email,
pops
we
up
can
at all
get them
during, we can
for
have them
lunch.
jump in.
Okay, I do have a couple slides for the O'Brien concept plan. Next slide. You did review this at your August 25th council meeting. And at the time, you generally supported the concept, but had a number of questions about the street alignment. And the feasibility study that was underway was not yet completed. So that has now been done. The feasibility study was done in October. And that feasibility study does indicate that the preferred alignment for the street is on the north side of the O'Brien property. And the updated concept plan in the bottom of the screen shows that preferred street alignment drawn on the concept plan. And so really the question tonight is the council supportive of proceeding with this concept plan with the road in that location? If you go to the next slide, you can see the only change from last time, the plan on the left is the street alignment. It doesn't show up real great on the screen, but the image on the right is the same plan, but it's got grading for that street, and the street alignment shifted a skosh based on what was in the feasibility study. So the next slide.
So those are different though than what's in the engineering report.
What is?
That map. I gotta find an example of that.
Well, they've kind of taken, well,
If you look at the example of development concept A, the building layout is totally different.
oh, yeah, that was an early concept. That was not the one you saw in August.
Okay.
That's fair. Sorry,
Okay.
I understand what you're saying. That was an early concept that they came in with, that we started the feasibility study on, but the concept that you saw in August is the one on the left.
So it hasn't changed since we've seen it.
Okay.
It's changed since we at staff level first spoke to them, but not since you've seen it.
Gotcha.
And so they're back tonight because, in light of the conversation we had last time about the challenges with the street alignment through this property, and the findings in the feasibility study, which is included in your packet, they really wanted to come back to the council and get feedback. And again, this is the sketch plan stage, so any comments are advisory, but as you saw from an earlier application tonight, the council really provides the feedback and the applicant takes that and proceeds forward. So if you can provide detailed feedback, the applicant can then decide how to proceed with their application. And the applicant is here in the audience tonight as well.
You'd like to speak? Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having us. So first, my original intention here was not to have a road because it's adding about $1 million to our project. And honestly, I don't know that we're going to proceed with it because it's added such an expense. Once we have this come back, the elevation change, the retaining wall, the road right, and then just the change of the whole scope. I mean, this whole north corner of the property is what really drove us to this property to start. Heavily wooded, just a beautiful, very, kind of we talked about earlier, the reason I came here was because of the beauty of Corcoran in the city. I didn't want to have an industrial building. I want to have more of a residential feel. And when I walked this property the first time, there were pheasants, there were deer, and I was like, this is it. So originally the road was kind of coming through the center of the property, which was going to make the property kind of worthless. So the talk was to move north. Personally, I just didn't want it because it takes out all the natural beauty of the lot. And now that we've gotten the plan back and actually gotten bids on the road, it's somewhere between $800,000 and $1.2 million of added cost for the road with all the fill, the retaining wall. Currently, there's a road that comes in, or a gravel road that comes in the property from the south, and we estimated about $200,000 to finish that road. And this is somewhere between $800,000 and $1.2 million. So, and then from staff communicated to me that they need a second the development to the west requires in and out at 2 points. That's why they want a road to come through here. And so I respect that. But I just think the cost of the land, the added cost of the road, and then the building costs where they've gone to the project, I mean, I'm nearing almost like $350 to $400 a square foot to build this building, and it's just, I mean, I'm now getting calls to look at buildings in town that are 50,000 square foot buildings for half the price. It's just gotten so expensive. And so my personal wish, honestly, would be to eliminate the road and save the $1 million, to be honest with you. And if that's not feasible or able to do, I respect that. I understand what the city requires. But it's not a threat. It's not an ultimatum to anyone. It's added such a tremendous cost for the size of building. I mean, we're somewhere in the 15 to 20,000 square foot building, and the cost of that is just added so much per square foot that it's really become a challenge. And I didn't know if there was any options. I mean, is there any options to share the cost of the road with the entire industrial park? Or some type of, if we do pay, I have a commercial building in Elk River that my business is in currently. And when we first did that there, I had like an abatement program where we paid for all the infrastructure up front, but as the industrial park came through, we got some abatement dollars back to help offset. I don't know if the city's ever done stuff like that, or if those are options. Because that industrial park to the west is big. I mean, there's a lot of users in there, or going to be a lot of users.
To your question about recoupment, could you do that with the street infrastructure like we did with water, with Lennar?
Oh, a recapture agreement?
Recapture agreement? We
don't
did that
know if
with,
it can.
we did it with that with
We do it
water and
with sewer, we do it with sewer, sanitary sewer.
Okay.
Doesn't that get into the
I think we'd have
transportation?
to have- I think transportation's potentially a different element, so we'd have
Yeah,
to get some
post
legal
Harstead.
counsel on that, I'm not, but
There might be some legal issues to our ability to do that.
it would be a deviation from current policy, but we can
Mm-hmm.
inquire.
We did, so this is a little bit of a different situation, that, to be clear, you know, ultimately, it's the city's goal to have a street connecting Rolling Hills and Pioneer Trail. I wouldn't say that that industrial park needs the second access. We always want second access points, but that's not why this is here. It's to connect those two streets and allow development of not only this property, the Garages 2 property, and at some point, perhaps some redevelopment of the Medina Electric. You know, we did for Park Place Storage, we took the right-of-way and entered into a 429 waiver with them, where we said when the property to the west, which is now the solar farm, develops, they'll pay their fair share of the road. But it just deferred the cost, it didn't eliminate the cost. That's the only thing I can think of that we've done with roads in Corcoran. We have not done tax abatement or anything like that.
Okay.
Garages 2 currently they're allowed to continue to be connected to 55, but did we have a stipulation that they're required to connect to a public street if one's provided?
I
Yes.
believe so. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
But they're not required to build it. The person who develops the Medina Electric property would be required to build that road connection,
That section.
because it runs through their property, not the Garages 2 property.
Yeah, so if all parties are required to build their own section, you're not really recouping much, if anything.
Yeah, again, I don't know, when I first looked at it, I just think the amount of road that I would have on my property that would be used by the entire industrial park, that's why I was like, you know, and again, I'm not using it for development rights, I'm not building a 100,000 square foot building, I just
Yeah.
don't have I don't have the ability to offset the cost.
And it's a totally fair point to bring up. I think we might run into limitations on, specifically with transportation, there's a lot of legal precedent, what you can have development pay for that's not an immediate impact of, you know, that site. So I think we need to talk to the city attorney on that more.
Get the city attorney opinion before we could look at that as an option.
Did we run into a similar situation with Nelson? Didn't they have to construct a public street
On the north
have
side,
access.
that's right.
They constructed the turn lanes at the public street, and then they have a temporary driveway on the northeast side, and when the road gets built, they have to flop that over, so it's a little
Okay.
different. They built the turn lanes at the public street location,
Okay,
and they have to flop their driveway access when the road's constructed in the future.
okay. I didn't remember that.
So maybe that's just the next step is to talk to the city attorney and see if there's creative ways and maybe set up a meeting with staff, and I'm happy to sit in on that as well and see what routes there are. And, you know, if it's not something that's financially feasible right now, then maybe it's a moot point, the rest of it for the time being.
Yeah, and I even went to the seller. I don't currently own the property. We're waiting for approval on a few things to finalize. And I tried to negotiate with the seller on the property too when this first came about, because we knew we were gonna take an added cost. And he was not in a position to do that, he said at the time, so that's why, we love the property, we love the city, it works for what we wanna do with it, and we'd love to be here, but financially, if it doesn't make sense, I understand that too, so. And I know we have I think we have till like the 29th of December to execute on our purchase agreement. I can get
Okay.
an extension, but for the seller's rights, I just want to keep him in the loop as to what we're doing and.
Yeah, if you want to follow up
I
with
can reach
Jessica.
out to John.
Perfect.
Yeah.
We can connect, I'll get you my
Perfect.
card.
Perfect. And then regarding this, the rest of the building itself, is there any feedback we want to give now? Or a lot of it's going to be dependent on what we can figure out, if anything, with the road. But is there anything that stands out to anyone about what the proposed building would be?
From the building, no. I think it's set far enough back from every side that I can't see.
I like the way you
Lot of
described it,
there.
what you're looking to do. I think that,
Love to have them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
your
Love
language
to have it
really
on
is
this parcel.
my language.
Yeah.
You know, ideally, I was the one deciding not to have the tip-up panel building.
Mm-hmm.
That's what everyone's pushing me to do, but I don't want that. That's not what that lot has, and, yeah.
love hearing that.
It's neat to see your vision.
Yeah,
I think the biggest pushback we'll probably hear is proximity of the road to the neighbors to the north. You
Definitely.
know, and the retaining wall, if it goes that route. Maybe staff could clarify for me why a private drive wouldn't work as a temporary solution?
I'm sorry, the door was opening.
Would it, why a private drive wouldn't work as a temporary solution?
Well, a private drive to serve them, you could take the right-of-way and get a private drive. The problem is then how do you pay for the road in the future?
Yeah.
And then I thought when we talked, that private drive down to that front southeast corner, it wasn't far enough away from, if we were to use that existing driveway, that's not far enough away from that intersection and such.
Correct.
right?
And that gets even trickier because that's Medina and I-55.
Yep.
All sorts of stuff.
Can we miss the public comments on this, or?
We did have one before, but if you'd like to speak, we can kind
I didn't
of,
hear that he asked for that.
Sure.
gotcha, yeah, we can, do you have anything else you'd like?
no, again, what I'm assuming is you're gonna get some feedback from the people to the north there, and just to be clear, I don't wanna have a road there.
Gotcha.
I don't wanna see them, they don't wanna see me. What's there is beautiful, I'd love it to stay as is. So I think if that's most of the feedback you're gonna hear from the landowners, that I'm on that same page, to be honest with you, so that
Gotcha.
would be amazing.
Perfect,
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
And yeah, if you'd like to come up and
You wanna
speak, we can
come
do
to
that
the-
now. We did it a little out
I don't
of
think
order.
I'm the only one. Did anybody else want to make a comment?
You know, we,
I'll start. Okay. So,
Well,
Can we
state your
get-
You
name.
can state your name and address.
Jack Curley, 6220 Rolling Hills Road. And I live right across from the property. So, I don't know how many have ever driven down Rolling Hills Road, but,
Every one of us.
okay, you know that hill, and you're talking about putting that road on top of that hill? It seems awful dangerous. And putting it down farther is even more dangerous. What about that private driveway on the west side coming off 55? What's the deal with that? Like,
this here,
this drive here.
Oh, that's yours.
Right, you come in and back it in. Isn't this guy asking for commercial up here that has that driveway?
That driveway is already under development by an owner.
Under development, right, isn't he doing?
It's
some commercial
garages,
stuff up there?
garages too.
It's a garages deal.
Garages, so isn't that part of the industrial park, or,
No.
No.
but it's commercial, right?
Yes.
Industrial.
Yes.
So he's gonna have access here to that?
It's on a
Temporary
different
access.
parcel.
I know it's on a different parcel, but it's a commercial access, right?
It's a private drive,
It's
is
a
what it
private.
is.
It's a private?
Yeah, so we can't mandate it.
To me, it makes a lot more sense to come in here and turn right in. I want to talk it here. I don't know who came up with this, but you're gonna have all kinds of traffic coming in here. And you're talking about putting in turn lanes? Where are you gonna put the turn lanes, in the wetlands? And where are the utilities coming in? So there's no utilities here now, right?
Again, we're in the concept stage of this and
Right.
just
Well,
talking
I'm just
and
thinking long-term here.
all of those things we are thinking of too, sir,
Right.
along with our staff. Yep,
The hill, the hill here.
yep.
I don't know, when it's feeding an industrial park over here also, I don't know, the amount of traffic coming in there. Isn't there another way to put another road over here to the west?
If it was Corcoran, we may have a different plan.
Part of the issue is that it's kind of that
It's Medina.
corner there where it's Medina, and then the highway is obviously controlled by the state.
The state doesn't want another entrance, or,
They want to get rid of that.
Yeah, the spacing on Highway 55 is even longer, so you're not going to really get another one from Rolling Hills to Pioneer.
Yeah.
So just a higher speed, higher volume,
Yep.
less access points.
I appreciate the developers, wants to keep it, I like the buffer here, that's great. I'm not opposed to having something here, what I'm opposed to is having a freeway of traffic going down here. Because what do you suppose happens when Highway 55 gets backed up? They're all gonna turn here, and they're gonna come down that road and cut through to 19. You're gonna have a mini offshoot of 55.
And that's all stuff we will have to consider if something were to go forward. But I appreciate your comments. And, at this point, I don't know that we know something is going to happen, given, there's a lot to figure out with the
Well,
applicant.
your guys' long-term plan is to connect Rolling Hills to Pioneer Trail, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
Regardless of the developer, you want to make that connection, right? At the top of that hill. Is that what you're saying?
That's the top of the hill from an engineering standpoint provides you the safest connection point due to site distances and sight lines. And so that would be the preferred spot from an engineering traffic standpoint. There's
Yeah,
another alternate one, but there may be some environmental wetland implications because there's an avoidance.
Well, if you put it down anywhere here, you're asking for an accident, because people come flying up over that hill. When I pull out on the wrong side of the road, so I don't get rear-ended. Because people come flying over that hill, and if you got anywhere access in here, I don't know.
I appreciate the comments.
Thank you.
Thank you, son.
We don't currently have anyone else online.
Okay. Go ahead, yeah. If you'd like.
Jim Latola, 6230 Rolling Hills Road. So the way the concept is, the road would come right at the end of the driveway. So it's just something that was pointed out to me today. So we try to keep up somewhat with what's going on in the city, but we've been here 25 some years, trying to keep up. So. But this is a new thing, so it's kind of an informational thing for us. And so wondering, first off, what kind of a timeline are we looking at for this whole industrial project. And then, obviously, that intersection from Rolling Hills to 55 is not the ideal intersection, and so having another industrial access point there would, is there a concept for changing that intersection there? Is it cut off, or is it put lights there, or lights are put on Pioneer? Or how does that, how do you envision that? Because even with the amount of traffic that's now going from Rolling Hills onto 55 is, it's not an ideal, it's not an ideal intersection. So then, where do we get more information on this whole concept and project? That would be something that would be nice to follow, I mean, there hasn't been like signs proposed, building site here, stuff like that to pique our interest for this, so I don't.
Yeah, I can try to address a couple of those. First off, I'd recommend grabbing my card on the way out and reaching out to me, and I can follow up with you. But in terms of the park that's been discussed, timeline on that would be coming into council.
So the Pioneer Trail Industrial Park on Pioneer Trail and 55 should have a blue sign up down there. And that's going to Planning Commission next week. That's a different project than what we're talking about today, but there's a public hearing next week at the Planning Commission for the Pioneer Trail Industrial Park.
And then typically it's not the meeting the next week, but the following meeting was when it will come to council usually.
It will come to you on December 22nd or December
Last meeting
21st
earlier.
or something, depending what you do later in the agenda.
Are you inquiring about that or this?
I think it's both.
I'm talking about the whole thing as not this specific one, but the one with the proposed road from Rolling Hills all the way to Pioneer, and that whole.
It's
idea.
not all one project is the thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's two separate projects, and there is a parcel in between, so the road would not connect.
At this time.
At this time.
Okay.
If the property in between were to develop, that could make the road connection.
And in terms of the timing of this, it's hard to say because there's not a formal application in yet, so it would depend on,
So this is just a concept?
it's just a
All
concept.
kinds.
Okay, so this is information that, it's just new and popped up today from a couple neighbors that, what's going on here?
You're way ahead of the game because this is a sketch plan and most people don't hear about sketch plans until they become
Yeah.
proposed developments. And that's when you get the big crowds, right? Because it's
Yeah, okay.
too far along. So you're ahead of the game to provide comments, I would say. It's where you want to be.
Yeah.
Could staff speak to, so the road that's proposed, right, that's a concept road, that's been put forth a long, long time ago. Could you talk about that so they have understanding of that?
Right, if you've been here for 25 years, you might remember the United Properties project that got approved in 2004 on Rolling Hills and 55. Even prior to that, the city's comprehensive plans have showed a street connection, a Highway 55 frontage road, if you want to call it that, between Rolling Hills and Pioneer Trail. And in 2004, that road was designed to at least 60% design level, I think. It was very far along in the design, and the project did not proceed. So some future connection between Rolling Hills and Pioneer is a long-term plan. Neither this concept plan tonight, which is very early days, nor the Pioneer Trails Industrial Park that's going to have a public hearing next week will make that connection, but either one of them could start to make that connection as development occurs. The full connection would be made. As part of the Pioneer Trail project, which is not this project, the one for next week, there was a traffic study done. We'll talk about that next week, or if you want to give me a call or Jess a call, certainly could talk about that in advance too. But yes, that is a plan to make that road connection. Ultimately, it will connect all the way through to County Road 19. Kimberly Lane does extend west of Pioneer Trail right now in a right-of-way to continue this road connection.
Sounds a little, kind of hodgepodge. You got a project over here, you got a project over here, you got somebody in between, and, I don't know.
Unfortunately, that's kind of how it has to work.
Either works that way, or we fund it through public money, and nobody wants to bond for a road that benefits nobody until,
What would the point, I understand there's been some engineering.
If you could come up to the mic if you're gonna
Yeah, and
comments,
if
and
we could get your name and address.
My name is John Reed, and I just bought a house on 6210 Rolling Hills Road. And I just wonder, what would that junction between Pioneer and Rolling Hills, I mean, is it an ingress egress with a bunch of tractor trailer trucks that are gonna be popping down Rolling Hills Road and then getting to the top of the hill and making that turn and going across? Because in the other plan for the Pioneer Trail site, you can actually see a road and then there's a roundabout at the end. So it's not really quite clear in those plans where that road is coming in, or is it a cul-de-sac at the end if you're coming in from the west from Pioneer Trail. But I just, from a development standpoint, would you, because my property is directly to the east, so there wouldn't really be any way to, you just be connecting those two from Pioneer to Rolling Hills. I just don't understand what extra benefit that would give the city of Corcoran to have that road there. I mean, but obviously my interest is, I don't want tractor trailer trucks rolling by all the time going to these industrial parks, and also the added traffic that's going to be boosting up and down that road all the time. But I just don't understand what benefit that would give the city.
Kendra, if you could maybe speak to that a little bit.
Well, the city wants to, first of all, the city and MnDOT want to bring traffic off of Highway 55. That we don't want people coming off of that. So we get rid of some of the driveways, like this private driveway here onto Highway 55 that was referenced earlier, by creating backage roads or frontage roads, whatever you want to call them. And so that provides a connection through the city that allows stops as opposed to multiple access points on 55, so that you can go to 55 at key, safe intersections to get on and off.
yeah, I just wanted you, I think you did it in the end, you clarified your point, when you said we want people to come off 55. We don't want people to come off
You gotta
55 to
listen.
drive through our city
No.
streets. We don't want people accessing, like if we had 20 different commercial buildings there, we don't want 20 different access points on 55.
Yes.
That's what we're talking about, the access from a frontage road.
Sure.
I'll
We'll do,
I'll be brief.
sounds good.
And
We
I'm
can
probably the most impacted neighbor.
briefly do that, and then we'll wrap up the
I
comment.
apologize. Yeah, my name's David Wendell, 6301 Horseshoe Bend. I'll show you guys my bedroom window is 36 feet from the property line. I have small children. Same reasons everybody else, I moved out to be rural. I love the design, I have zero crystal distribution. If you actually go to their website, read their missions, like their history, it's an American, Native American story, it's beautiful. Great company. But again, there is another, in the drawings, of course, they get put up here. There is a second road, I know it's less than ideal, but his building isn't 100,000 square feet stuffed in there, and so the other concept drawing has it coming down. Sorry, the other neighbors, it's, might affect you more, but I mean, the back of my house is 36 feet off the property line. I mean, who would want that in their backyard? I mean, and this is defeating industrial park, so it's semi-traffic. I mean, the tractor trailer is 53 feet long, just the trailer. I mean, they come down that huge hill and slide off the road, they're gonna end up in my house. I mean, unless there's some serious guardrails. And again, turn lanes, this road, where are you gonna put the turn lanes? In my property? I mean, this road already has to be biased over, if I'm not mistaken, within the right of way. It's not gonna be dead center, it's actually gonna be even closer, so I know that there's enough room to put in fencing, gates, guardrails. And if I don't know if you have it on the computer, but the other drawing shows all the grading. They're grading up like past my garage. I mean, it's blowing in my yard just to put in a road. Well, the retaining wall is gonna be, as he can tell you, the retaining wall is not gonna be cheap. I mean, it's significant. Anyways, that's all I got. It's literally right outside my bedroom window, so obviously I'm not a big fan of the road placement. And I understand it needs to go, but in the packet, it says that there's two roads, and one's 40 feet north of this property line, one's 40 feet south of that property line, so, I mean, he might have to move his building, but I think there could be a compromise in the middle of that road. And the packet shows that it dives down. There could be a compromise. And yes, I think it got brought up when I emailed last time. Yes, I'd rather look at the back of this building than have tractor trailers 36 feet from my bedroom window. So
Appreciate the
that's all I
feedback,
got.
and I'd say definitely follow up. It's, like Alan said earlier, it's early days on this,
Yeah.
so.
We just kind of glazed over.
We're gonna have to move
One
on.
comment. If you did do the access down here where the road already is, but it didn't go through, it just fed him, would make sense. But if people just came in here and just went there, not this.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And mine isn't like semi-tractor.
No, that's what I mean.
Hey, guys,
We gotta-
we did the
back
discussion
and
at the
forth.
beginning. The mayor's broke it up. We're turning it into something we don't want it to be. We're a long way from the end, guys.
Okay. So I think, unless anyone has another comment on that, good there?
Jim Dahl, 6300 Rolling Hills Road.
Okay.
And I just found out about it this afternoon here, so I called neighbors to see if any of them knew about it. And I don't think there's, I don't know what the process is. I ended up calling City Hall down here, and they told us that, this is, if you want to comment, you can come down here today. So that's why I came down here. I think they pretty well stated what some of the concerns are. I'm concerned that it's a weight-restricted road already, you're weight limited, they post this thing, and now you're talking about having trucks come out on it, and I'm sure there's a whole history on it, which is apparently not tonight what we're talking about, but, there's some concerns we have. They have, so that's where a lot of them are here tonight.
Very early in the process.
All right.
Good job
Appreciate it.
coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Kevin is raising his hand.
Just a real point of clarification, it's in here. There would be no turn lanes constructed off of Rolling Hills Road with this development. They would be considered when the road got extended in the future. So we look at it on a parcel basis, and that does not trigger warrants for turn lanes. So there's been some statements that we'd be constructing turn lanes now off of Rolling Hills. That would not be the case, so just a point of clarification.
Gotcha, thank you.
And maybe you could
And I think,
clarify where they have second
And
access,
so then we
it's not
have-
in the south.
Yeah, so the primary access, again, is dictated, that's the most premium, safest connection for engineering up on the north end as it's shown. There is an alternative access that would be secondary from an engineering perspective. The challenge with that secondary access is it's going right through the wetland. And when you go through the permitting process for wetlands, one of the three criteria is there a way to avoid the wetland? And the answer would have to be, well, we could go along the north property line. It's a preferred access anyways. And my concern is they'll nail you right there and say, move it to the north. So.
Yep.
It's delineated, the flags go, it is wetland all the way to the north end of the property.
But it's minimizing the wetland.
we're gonna have
So I
to,
just want to make that clear. I don't want it to get out there that turn lanes are coming in for Rolling Hills as my primary.
appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep,
may I allow one more comment from this lady,
Sure.
please?
sure.
She's got up and down several times. and-
Sarah Latola, 6230. So I recently moved, and Rolling Hills Road is a really narrow and hilly road. And even just getting my mail or bringing my trash down, it is frightening with the cars coming with the blind hill. And so I couldn't imagine an increase in traffic plus bigger vehicles coming. It's a huge safety concern for anybody along that road just because it is so narrow and so hilly. So,
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
God, I forgot what I was going to ask.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, we've been those people that have slowed down traffic because we've spent time in your neighborhood looking at a number of things out there. So thanks for jumping up. All you guys, we are truly concerned. This is just a concept plan on just the one parcel. So you're hearing, other than our concept plan meeting a few months ago with the applicant, just to start this process. So nothing is going crazy. Not yet.
Now I remember what I was going to say. Somebody raised the point about public notice. We generally don't put notices on sketch plans because many sketch plans never come to fruition. So,
Yeah.
Once it's a formal application, we notice, we have to, and we do.
yeah, but I think this is really good, the public input we've got and support that you provided, just provided a lot of ideas and maybe even an idea to the applicant, you know. I don't know that he could talk to staff and the owners of garages too, but maybe that, the idea that came up, that he could access off that.
Off that private road? Yeah.
As was mentioned, that's something he could probably explore. Now, I don't know that that would ever come to fruition or not, but some useful information that came out of this public comment. All the comments were good, so appreciate it.
Absolutely. Okay, I think we'll wrap up this one and we'll move on to 8E, which is another concept plan for the Continental Properties Ebert McCormick site. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Give everyone a minute. Luck of the draw on the last item.
And you waited for everyone to clear out, didn't you?
Happy to be here.
Okay.
This is a sketch plan, and if you go to the next slide, for 19330 County Road 30, it's a proposal for a mix of 49 single-family homes, a 300-unit market-rate apartment complex, and a 1.8-acre commercial lot. The applicant is proposing to do the apartment complex, but it's a single site, and so it needs to be master planned. Currently, it's guided commercial on the eastern third and general mixed use in the central third, and the zoning corresponds as it's required to the land use. Next slide. So the applicant would be requesting a comprehensive plan amendment. There's a lot of big policy issues in this concept plan, and so I'm going to spend a little time walking through it because I think it's important that the council give the applicant good direction on the concept plan so they can make a decision about how to proceed. So their proposal is the image in the lower right-hand corner, which is to keep the commercial only for that 1.8-acre lot in the northwest corner. And then that central portion where the apartments are, they are proposing to re-guide to high-density residential, and then the western third or so to low-density residential. And this is a comprehensive plan amendment. This is the item where the council has the absolute most discretion. So if you think you don't like this, now is the time to say, we have concerns about this. The property was guided mixed use in both the 2030 and the 2040 comprehensive plans, and specifically noted to provide business development opportunities and jobs creation, tied specifically to the development of the Dayton interchange and the extension of Highway 610, which is going to connect to County Road 30. Next slide, please.
I am so confused where it is, Jess. I'm sorry. I'm not the city administrator.
Next slide.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. So, might have skipped over the rezoning. So there's a rezoning that goes with there we go. There's a rezoning that goes with the re-guiding. And they are requesting that the commercial retain the C2 zoning, and that the central portion, the orange portion, retain the general mixed-use zoning. But we can't do that. The general mixed-use zoning needs to go with the general mixed-use land use. So what they would need to do is rezone it to RMF3 to be compatible with that high-density residential land use. It's really not mixed use, which is why we're re-guiding it, or proposing to, and so the rezoning should be compatible with that. Then the west portion would be rezoned to RSF3, single and two-family residential. Again, the comp plan and the zoning need to be compatible, so if you change one, you need to change the other. Next slide. The application needs to comply with both the city code and the Northeast District standards, and the applicant has reviewed those, I think, in some detail and done a nice job generally of complying with those Northeast District standards, which are new. It appears that they comply with most setback requirements, but it's a sketch plan, not everything's dimensioned, and it does look like some of the lots may not be meeting the front yard setback requirements, but that's something that we'd need to work through if it proceeded. The current plan just has a toe over the line and requires an EAW. If the commercial building is 2,500 square feet or less, it does not require an EAW. So that's the scale of, I assumed 5,000 square foot commercial, that triggers an EAW, 2,500 wouldn't. So losing a couple of houses or a little bit of commercial space could mean it's not required. Again, an EAW is a tool to help us identify significant environmental impacts, but not a means for approval or denial. In terms of environmental issues on the site, you can kind of see them right through the middle. There's a couple of big wetlands. That north wetland is also floodplain. There's also significant natural resources in that northwest corner, identified in the significant natural resource inventory as a high priority wooded area. And so we would want to generally try to work to preserve those areas. Next slide. The plans, the Northeast District plans, excuse me, show a full access on 101 and County Road 30. And the 31 as shown on their plan is generally in the location, I think, where our plan shows that. The one on 101 is north of where the plan was showing the access point. Both the 30 and 101 access points were approved by Hennepin County conceptually, with the acknowledgement that final alignment would need to come in when the project does. The engineering memo did talk a little bit about those access points as well. So turn lanes would be required in both, and the final location would need to be approved by the county. So I think we have a little bit of finessing with that with the county if this were to proceed forward. One of the more significant shifts in the plan, I think, is the east-west road that was planned through the center of the site. Ultimately, that connection on 101 was intended to then wind through the site on the north side of the wetland and ultimately over to the property to the west. And so looking at where the road hits the property to the west is very far south. I think we'd like that to shift north so that it provides the most flexibility for that office, business park land use to the west. And the road that was running through the middle of the site is now on the north property line with Bellwether. And I think that's concerning, like the last application, when you build a road adjacent to existing homes. I think that's something we really want to think about. Public safety has some concerns as well about the hard right turns that road has, that they'd like to see it more wind through the site without having those turns. And just an initial concept plan level comment from them. We would do a traffic study if the project proceeds, and we'd look at things like those right turns and stops and things. Somewhat related to the access, one of the reasons the access is where it is because the applicant's proposing a gated community for that apartment complex. And that's something they, according to the narrative, do in all their projects. I did want to note that Bellwether asked for the same thing and different council, but they said, no, that's not the character that we want in Corcoran, is gated communities. And so I think you should think about that. It is very much a different character. when you do gate-off neighborhoods. It also limits streets, sidewalks, and trail connections, so something to be thinking about. You can see in the upper right-hand corner kind of that street connection that runs from 101 out to 116. And that, I think, is a little bit, needs a little more finessing with this concept. Next slide. One of the one of the flexibilities, not PUD, excuse me, they are not asking for a PUD, they're coming in under straight zoning. One of the things they would need a variance for, however, is parking. They are proposing 1.75 stalls per unit. That's well under what our code would require. And they're also requesting a variance to allow smaller parking stall sizes than our code requires. So 2 variances, again, they need to show practical difficulties, and the council should provide some feedback on the feelings about those 2 variances. Architecture, they did based on their analysis, based on the GMU district standards for apartments, and it does comply with that. The RMF3 standards for multifamily, though, are different, and it does not look like the current buildings comply with those standards. So that's something they'd need to spend a little time on. I think they're attractive buildings, and I think they generally comply with the intent of the RMF3 district, but garage size and a lot of those things simply don't comply with those standards. And we don't have any details right now on the single family or commercial because the applicant is not proposing to develop those. Utilities would be extended from Bellwether. Their proposal says they'd like to work with Maple Grove and get temporary water from them until the city water system is online and hopefully the end of 2024. But again, a feasibility study would be required, and we'd need to have a conversation with Maple Grove about their willingness to do that. The concept plan shown in the lower right does show a lot about the amenities in the project. It's a very interesting concept, a lot of amenities for its residents. Next slide. So that was my speed run. You have more detail in your staff report, but this is a sketch plan. It's an opportunity for the applicant to get feedback. If the council supports the request or the concept, the next step would be an EAW, unless they change their plans, and then it would be just the feasibility study. Then comprehensive plan amendment, rezoning, preliminary plat, and variances, and then a final plat application. We've identified some concerns where we specifically asked for feedback. If the council doesn't support the project, they should provide that direction to the applicant. Next slide. And so the next slide, I think, just says this is a concept plan, comments are advisory. The applicant is here and have waited, and they do have a presentation, Mr. Mayor, that they would like to walk through.
Great.
Sure, give me just one
Then
moment.
afterwards, can you go back to the slide of the variances and things that are requested after their presentation? There's like 2 slides back.
Sounds good. You will get just a moment.
Good evening, everyone. We do have slides. If you guys
Yes,
just
I'm
pulling
working
them.
on pulling them up. I'm sorry. Give me just a moment here.
So in the interest of time, I'll move through these as quickly as possible. If I glance over something and you have additional questions, we can jump back to that slide, but I will try to move through this quickly. My name is Jordan Tyken. I'm with Continental Properties. I'm here tonight with my colleague Eric Tome. We are a multifamily housing developer based out of Menominee Falls, Wisconsin. You can go to the next slide. Like I said, Continental has experience developing retail, hotel, and most recently multifamily. We've been developing multifamily for over 20 years now and have a portfolio that expands throughout the country. Next slide. Here is a image of our presence both nationally and then some of our developments in the Minneapolis-St. Paul market. As you can see, Springs at Brockton Lane would be located here, and then our other properties are south and east of the city. Next slide. So we wanted to touch very quickly on market fundamentals. The question is, why Corcoran? We feel that Corcoran has strong demographics, well-educated, high incomes, and a high share of white-collar workforce. We also feel that there's strong occupancies in Corcoran, so steady occupancy and a demand that will keep pace with supply. Next slide. I'll brush over these quickly, but again, why Corcoran? The location. We feel that it's a growing city, and then specifically why the site. It is a site with high visibility, close to retail, trade area of Maple Grove, and is can be primed for our development. Next slide. So Kendra touched base on this, but this is a site plan of the master plan. So you can see this is in the northwest corner of 97th and Brockton Lane. Existing is Mama G's bar down in the southeast corner. Future commercial that is not part of our proposed development north of that. You would access our proposed development off of Brockton Lane, past a 1.8 acre commercial parcel, through a dedicated right-of-way. The primary access point to the multifamily development just west of that primary entrance. Again, there'd be 300 units throughout this development, and then this right-of-way would lead both to the Bellwether subdivision to the north and the single-family residential portion to the west. We have gotten a wetland delineation on this property and have made every effort to avoid the wetlands and protect natural resources on this site. Next slide, please. So as Kendra mentioned, this is the current zoning, so it's a mix of C2 zoning and a commercial land use in the comp plan, and then GMU zoning and a mixed use land use in the comp plan. As you can see, the zoning and the land uses align with each other. Next slide. So in this proposed development, the commercial parcel at the northeast corner would retain the C2 zoning and commercial use, the dedicated right-of-way. The GMU zoning would stay for the high-density residential land use. It is our understanding going through the Corcoran code that code permits multifamily housing in in GMU zoning if it's over 10 units per acre. And then on the far west side, RSF3 zoning with a low density residential land use. Next slide, please. To touch briefly on this, we would not be developing the single family phase. The seller is currently looking for an experienced single family developer, but as part of this effort, we would be rezoning and amending the comprehensive plan for a future phase of single-family residential development on the west end of this site. Next slide. This is a quick map just showing in greater detail the existing wetlands and natural resources, which you've seen on the other plans. Next slide. And then this is a more detailed plan of our property. This would be our Springs brand, so that is our luxury Class A housing brand. So the name of the development would be Springs at Brockton Lane. There would be 15 buildings, 300 units. All of these buildings would be direct garden style access, 20 units per building. There'd be a mix of surface and covered parking, both with attached garages to the units and detached garages. There's also a clubhouse located in the northeast corner. There is a fitness center and a pool at the clubhouse, along with some other amenities that I'll brush over here quickly. Next slide. So again, our Springs brand, market rate housing, Continental owns and manages all of our properties. Next slide, please. This shows our anticipated rent range, and then a quick overview of demographics. About 9% of our residents typically are school-age kids, and when I say school-age, that's K through 12. 40% of our residents typically have pets. In the site plan, we do show two what we call pet play areas. And this would house approximately 637 total residents. Next slide, please. This is just an overview of the anticipated spending of residents. So we calculated that this would bring about $23 million of estimated annual spending to the city of Corcoran through the residents that would live there. Next slide. Again, Continental owns and manages all of its properties. We have a great property management staff. Next slide, please. These are some photos of our other Springs developments. So as you can see, the clubhouse, there's a pool, an outdoor patio, a grill area. There's a inside of the clubhouse, there's a kitchen, Wi-Fi, cafe, and 24-hour fitness center with there's garage doors on the fitness center that actually open up and look out onto the pool, and it's a very nice setup. Next slide, please. This is additional images, both of a pet play area, an outdoor grilling and seating area, and then a car care station that provides residents an area to clean their cars, wash their cars, vacuum out their cars. And that building that the car care station is at also houses room for our maintenance staff. We do have on-site maintenance staff at all of our communities. Next slide, please. And then these are just some elevations, first of our clubhouse. So as you can see, these are showing masonry. This shows front, left, right, and side. These would be branded with our Springs signage on the tower there. Next slide. In order to have variation in architectural style, we would have two different schemes. This is scheme A. As you can see, it has a little bit different colors than scheme B if you go to the next slide. So scheme B has a different color palette. So again, these different color schemes would vary as you move throughout the community to provide more architectural interest. Next slide, please. These are some typical floor plans. As you can see, there's outdoor patio areas dedicated to the unit, to the one bedroom, and all of these again would be direct access, so you could access them from the exterior of the building. Next slide. 2 and 3 bedroom shots here. Next slide. Again, I know you asked about the variance requests. So what we'd be looking for with the Springs community would be a variance on the total number of parking stalls. We'd be requesting a ratio of 1.75. We do in the memo, we did include some other data of our other Minnesota properties. We are, aware of snow that you guys get in Minnesota and the need to store that, and taking all that into consideration and the data we have regarding the need of parking of our residents in other communities, we feel that 1.75 is a good number. Parking stall and drive aisle dimensions, we are showing 18-foot depth parking stalls. I believe the code is 18-foot 6-inch. And then we are showing 24-foot wide drive aisles. Again, this is typical of our other communities, and specifically on this site, to fit the density that we need and avoid the natural resources, specifically the wetlands, we did need to make some concessions on those parking stall and drive aisle dimensions. Building material deviations. if this were to go to a RMF3, there would, as Kendra mentioned, there would be building material deviations there. And then lastly, I believe code says adjacent to a right-of-way, there is a 4-foot fence height allowed, and our typical fence height is 5 feet, just so that it served its purpose of truly being a gated and fenced community. Next slide, please. And Kendra did touch on this. As part of this, as part of our plan here, we would be requesting an amendment to the water agreement between the city of Corcoran and Maple Grove. Next slide. And we would be requesting this prior to Corcoran Water coming online with its new water tower at the end of next year or early 2025. Right now, with increased interest rates and higher construction costs, our project is facing a lot of hurdles to jump over. So to keep things on schedule and ensure that we can break ground prior to the market shifting and changing again, we would ask that the city of Corcoran help us with speaking with Maple Grove and amending that water agreement to help us with our anticipated timeline. Next slide, please. So again, thank you guys for listening. We're excited to hear feedback on your thoughts on the proposed master plan in the Springs community. And then to brush over what we talked about, we'd like feedback on the Maple Grove and Corcoran water agreement amendment, the zoning change and comprehensive plan amendment, and lastly, those variances that we discussed.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Maybe I'll start off with a couple things, actually, if you could keep that last slide up.
Yes.
Yeah, that one. So the water agreement and the timeline that was up there before, I don't know, if we said we were absolutely on board with this and wanted it to happen, I don't know that there's any indication that Maple Grove would be willing to, or certainly that there'd be a quick timeline on that. I don't know that it's possible. If it wouldn't be quick, I would assume, if it is possible.
Well, we'd have to meet with them and present the plan, and they
Yeah.
want to review it, and then
It'd be
we'd have to see what their feedback was.
Right.
I don't think they're gonna look at it just in this phase. They're gonna look at what's happening on the property in total.
Mhm.
And so those other planning land use changes,
Right.
they're gonna wanna understand.
Right.
Well, it's a little bit out of our control, I think is a good way to say it.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, Eric Tillman, Continental. Yeah, we're just trying to mitigate a little bit of the risk for us, trying to speed it up. Market's already switched, you've heard tonight already, just before us, about somebody that's having some construction costs and it's causing some pain. So we're trying to get a little bit ahead of that. If we can't do it, I don't think it means that we would drop the project, but it would mean that it probably extends our timeline out then to a 2-year period to try and match the city of Corcoran, which can cause some risk on our part. So really be looking to work with the city for ways to, cost savings, any kind of design things that we can do to make sure that we can keep the project in alignment. Because when you're talking about that much time frame, we're hopeful that construction costs come down. But as you guys have probably seen in the last 2 years, it's been a tough road with those construction costs. While financing continuing to go up 3/4 of a point, probably again in December. It puts constraints on the other end when you're talking about construction financing and permanent financing.
Oh, gotcha. Does anyone have any thoughts on that aspect of it specifically? I don't know that it's going to be a doable thing in all honesty, but I think we should probably get into the other parts of it. The comp plan and zoning. Outside of some of the rezoning requests, the part that would stay GMU under this proposal, does that meet our zoning on that? That doesn't seem to meet the intent of that district to me. It would seem like that could be part of a mixed use.
Yeah, we don't think this is a mixed-use project in the way that the GMU district defines it, which is primarily a retail office with some residential. And so if we are re-guiding it, if we're keeping it GMU, I think there needs to be more of a mix of uses. If you give that up, it's a residential zoning district. And so the question is, are you willing to give up your mixed use 80 acres here for a residential subdivision at this stage of the game? And I just want to be really frank, that's the question. And we can work through the zoning, but really, if you re-guide it to residential, which I think you need to, because I don't think it meets the intent of the GMU mixed-use land use or zoning, if you re-guide it as they ask to the medium-density residential, you need to rezone it to that, too.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thoughts on that aspect? That would be a substantial change.
So what I would want to see in the GMU area is something that's more like a small-town Main Street with housing integrated above or in close proximity, and I don't think this does that. I think we're far too early in the life cycle of the Northeast District to give up on how it's guided 6 months after development became possible. So I don't think it's a good fit with the intent of the district. I wouldn't, if we wait until 2028 and nothing has happened, maybe at that point you think about, did we set up this plan correctly and should we be looking at something else in this area? But I think it's far too early in the game to look at a modification at this point, especially given differences between land values for commercial versus even high-density apartment-type complexes. I think we'll get more tax revenue per acre if we can find something that actually would be mixed use versus just consigning ourselves to an apartment.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I mean, we hedged a bet on Brockton Interchange to bring commercial, not more residential to the area. And that's where I would like to see. And to me, there's nothing here that moves the needle on this. And actually, I think if the concept was presented to the wider area up there, this place would still be packed with people, because I think 300 units of market rate apartments next to Bellwether is going to go over like a lead balloon.
We're gonna need a bigger room.
Yeah, and when you talk about 9% of your population being kids, there's no amenities that I see for kids other than a pool here. So that's going to tax the park that's on the other end of Bellwether, pushing kids through that area. That's something I see that stood out on your concept plan to me, but really that wouldn't change the needle for me either, so.
I think part of the issue is, I appreciate the info you guys put together of what the average family would be spending in the area. The problem is, this is the area that we'd hope they'd be spending that money. And when we take this out, and then it has the impact on the business park next to it, it kind of takes away the whole commercial area that we're hoping to develop.
Would a commercial area though really be able to be as limber as we're being, trying to save all the environmental resources that are around this area? I mean, there's a pretty significant environmental impacts to this 80-acre site. So you really have a much less footprint. If you're talking larger retail, it's hard to wiggle in there.
Those two wetlands aren't moving, no matter who goes in.
Right, so what I'm saying is, if you
To
get a
plop 300 units in the middle of two wetlands and a single-family neighborhood to the north with only one entrance, you're driving a whole bunch of these people out to the west, up through Bellwether and out that entrance when things, I love the thoughts and the concept. I don't like the traffic pattern. I don't like the fact of the density. It's going to be next to a whole number of commercial things, and on the west side, or on the east side against 101 and stuff, it doesn't flow, it doesn't fit in my mind. I would see more of these up against County Road 30, but I don't even like that either. I don't see low density next to County Road 30 with those 3 backyards and that cul-de-sac to the bottom side. But, yeah, I understand it's a ghost plat and stuff. it just doesn't
Doesn't
look like
seem to
it
be the
belongs
fit.
at this corner.
I also noticed it doesn't make sense to me to put a low-density section between high-density residential and an industrial park.
Commercial.
Or a business
Or
park.
commercial business.
Well, that's what I mean, on the west side, that's
Yeah.
not residential at all. So it's creating more of the same kind of problem we just spent 2 hours on at 7:30.
Well, to me, this 300 units would look better sitting next to those 5 commercial buildings,
Yeah.
industrial buildings, than sitting where it's proposed to be sitting now.
I think there are other spots in the city where it would make sense to have something like this. I just don't think this is the area for it.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And then to go along with how much they'd be spending in Corcoran, we don't have anything in Corcoran.
Yeah, there's no travel, transportation, insurance, entertainment, apparels, or computer in
Yeah.
the city of Corcoran. What we need is that
Right
for
there.
people to buy it,
Yeah.
not for people to go take that money and spend it in Maple Grove.
Yeah, that's spending power in general, so yeah, it can be Maple Grove or anywhere else it is, but that's what the residents themselves, we look at the spending power of the community,
Sure,
that's what it.
I understand that, but the exhibit just highlights the lack of all these things in our city currently.
And that intersection is so subpar with the developments in Maple Grove, with the developments in Bellwether. I mean, those 3 corners it's terrible now to do things. Not much can happen on the south west corner of that parcel because that is one huge wetland. There's an awful lot of things going on here, and County Road 30 isn't gonna get bigger, and 101 isn't gonna get bigger. And it's not one of those things, build it and they will come. We've gotta do some finessing with the state and the county on some of these roads. I don't know if we can.
For me, the biggest thing is what Jeremy pointed out too, is that this area was banked on mixed use with commercial.
Yeah.
I mean, we set money in motion years ago with putting money into the Brockton interchange to drive that growth down this way. And I can't backpedal from that right now in this area.
I would agree.
When you were talking, I saw something someplace about this being, the overall would be medium density with that combination of low and high? Is that, or am I hallucinating?
I
on
didn't
something
say
right
that,
now?
but I don't think I
Okay.
said that, but I suppose you could blend that, and you probably would be in a medium.
But on the high density, I calculated out, that's about 17 units per acre.
That's correct.
And that's way on the high side of medium density. That doesn't even fit into medium density.
No, it would be high density.
Yeah.
They would make that middle part high density and the west part low density. I mean, if you blended them, I thought you were asking, over the site, you probably end up somewhere in a,
Would it be medium all over with low and high like that? It would end up being a medium number.
I don't know
That's
that it
true.
would with that much
Well,
wetland.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I didn't do that math, because I think it is 2 separate projects,
Yeah.
the low and the high density, as they've laid it out, so I didn't actually do that math, I'm not sure.
But I think you hit the right in the head, is what we're trying to do is get residential blended density to get more of a medium feel overall.
I think if we wanted to do that here, the layout still would be an issue in terms of where, if we wanted that mix of residential, which to Alan's point, I don't think we do, given how we position this property to develop. But if we did want that mix, I would say you'd want the single family on the Bellwether side buffering it, and the
higher
density closer to 30, I guess, or closer to the business park. So I think.
And then the conversation about gated community. We have one right now in the city and the gate's never closed. So
Is that Bellwether, or is that?
No.
No.
No. it's
Oak Ridge Farm.
Oak
Oh.
Ridge Farm's
There's
down the
like
road here.
15 houses.
Okay.
It, in there on larger parcels of property, and being part of the Maple Grove development and such, there were so many negatives about gated communities that Maple Grove doesn't have one single gated community in the entire proper there. So knowing what I know and stuff, it'd be hard for me to support a gated community. I'd think more about it if it was single-family homes and not something like this. I mean,
Just speaking to the gated aspect of it.
yeah, I just, you're putting a lot of people in and amongst the group, and I see by your maps and stuff, you have a number of these, all kinds of places. Are you able to pick your tenants, those kind of things? I mean,
Well-
you put that many people in that small area, there's gonna be issues in my mind, so.
We do a thorough background check. You know, you've got to make 3 times, your current salary to make sure that, you've got enough to pay. We check to make sure you've got at least that much, to make sure you're paying rent. There's certain things we can't check for just by law, fair housing laws, but, I mean, we do go through a process where we vet residents to make sure that they can make rent, that they can and will follow our rules. One rule we have, because we are so pet friendly, 40% of our residents have pets, like Jordan was saying, is we do have a process where we take your dog DNA, and if we catch you not picking up after your dog, we fine you. And there's successive fines. I think we've only had to evict only a handful of times across our portfolio of 70 properties which we manage, so it's pretty effective.
Holy cow.
We should get our inspector to go out.
I don't mean to hand that over to staff there.
Kevin, you can put that on your plate along with a few other things we've suggested.
If I bring in bags, will you test it for me?
Yeah.
What's the appeal to the gate, though, to your tenants?
To be for that to be gated, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Security, sense of security for the tenants.
We do a pretty extensive follow-up with our residents when they first arrive, and we also follow up, when we hit release, we kind of follow up with the different questionnaires. And that's one of the main things they talk about, is just that sense of security. And we do have cameras also on, near the clubhouse and near the gates, because we have the one main gate that's the main access point. The secondary access point is really only an emergency gate. We want everybody coming through that front gate so that we know who's coming and going. So that kind of helps us out. And it's also, because we're so pet friendly, a secondary stop for pets that get loose. It happens. And that does help contain and not have your dog run, off to the neighbors. So it does some secondary things as well.
One quick question for staff. If this were to come in another part of the city, we just talked about a rental ordinance, licensing ordinance. Would we consider these to be townhomes, such they'd be subject to the 3-unit cap? Or are they classified some other way?
Initially, my thoughts would be to license it as an apartment building, where it'd be per building plus $15 per unit was the proposed fee. So I think that'd be much easier, since it's a rental community, to consider it an apartment, since they aren't traditional townhome style. And I think that'd be much easier for licensing purposes.
Just make sure the definitions allow for that then.
Yeah.
What we call these are stacked flats, because they don't have any common hallways, as Jordan was describing. So you've got your upper and lower, your direct access in here, and you've got a door over there that goes upstairs, that goes up into your unit on top. So that's what we call them stacked flats, because they're not a traditional townhome or different kind of a style, so that garden style.
Interesting concept.
I think just not the right fit or the right time. But I do appreciate you guys coming in. I don't know if anyone else has anything else to add. I think it's
I agree.
a tough fit there. Thank you, Bill.
Appreciate your feedback.
Thanks, guys.
Best of luck.
Okay, on to item 9. We have public comment, if anyone's on.
Yes,
Is
if you'd
anyone
like,
on?
we do have 6 participants
Whoa,
on,
nice.
2 of which are commissioners. We do have a couple other folks joining us, but.
Awesome. Well, we have a public comment opportunity for item 9A, which is just a review of the 2022 city calendar.
If anyone would like to comment, you can press star 9 on a phone, otherwise click reactions and raise your hand. Mayor and council, is just a chance to, as we get closer to the holidays, just to have a check-in. When we originally approved the calendar, we had looked at the 22nd. There was a error in the newsletter. It had December 21st. I'm not sure if it was a carryover from previous years, but we currently have it set up for the 22nd and just wanted to confirm whether or not we're all still comfortable with that. If we do need to change, we want to let our consultants know as soon as possible, just as we're getting ready.
22nd is a work session you're talking?
Just the
Lost
meeting
me for a
itself.
minute.
We do have a work session that we had previously discussed having on the 22nd. So it would be the continuation of the buffer yard
So both, so a work session.
ordinance, the work session and the meeting. So just to confirm, we want to keep it on the that Thursday. Unless
That
council.
works for me. I think I made my flight for the 23rd intentionally. So, whatever works for you guys.
I might not be able to make it on the 22nd. It might be difficult for me.
Would the
So
21st be any better?
The 21st would be better for me, yes.
Okay.
Or even the 20th would be perfect. But that might put too much burden on staff.
It would be the 8th.
And I don't know if it works for anyone else.
The 20th and 21st are wide open for me. Those are my off days.
Yeah.
Check one of my calendars.
It's up
I
to you guys.
don't know about the rest of our staff here, but if they'd be able to be here, it was just more of a check-in that Michelle had asked that we do.
I think maybe we look at,
Okay.
you can't do the 21st?
I can't do the 21st. I don't know about daycare for those 2 days.
So, and the 22nd, so I'd have to find someone for both dates.
Okay.
And that might be difficult.
Maybe do you want to reach out to Counselor Bottoма and see if
We can check.
we have 3 at least on the, because if we're short 1, it's okay. Well, we could be short 2, I guess, but
Yep.
can't be
I
short
can
3.
reach out to Counselor Bottom, and as long as it works for him, it sounds like the 22nd could
Work for you
continue
guys?
to work for.
The 20, all 3 days are fine. It's just 22nd is a work day for me, so not a big deal.
Sounds good.
My biggest thing is if Corcoran Farms goes to that date and we only have 3 people here, is that appropriate?
I think we're gonna have to make a decision on that one on the next meeting.
Yeah, but I do think, I agree, but I think we could technically approve it up. There's nothing that requires a 4/5 in it.
No.
We'd be
Not yet.
okay with 3 on the 22nd.
I got that comment. Yeah. Okay, on to 10A, which is next year's calendar.
Yes, just to be a quick item here, we have next year's calendar. At this point, we're proposing the only date change that we'd be looking at having a slightly different date would be this week next year.
Yeah.
So November 20th. I just note that the second December meeting, we will want to make sure to approve the budget by December 14th, the final budget by December 14th. The 28th is the very last day that you can submit things to the state for our truth and taxation items.
And that's also
Technically-
just bad timing.
Yeah, it's a bad timing, so we will have to have a final, in other years, we've been able to move it to that second meeting if we need to. So if we do keep the calendar as is, just that final budget will have to be adopted on the 14th.
If we plan ahead with the budget getting it done by the 14th, could we
we
try to plan it to not have I just feel like that's going to be an issue for a lot of people.
The 28th.
the week, or the dates being in between Christmas and New Year's.
Yeah, I
We-
think there'll be a lot of people missing on that.
Yeah.
And we could look at either not scheduling a meeting, then
We have
I
a
think the
bonus.
biggest question would be how to handle any December planning commission items.
Yeah, because we'd have to turn it around.
Because we'd have to turn it around for so the 7th, we'd have to turn around for the 14th. Or we could maybe look at doing something completely different and doing a mid,
Could we do like the 22nd or something?
we could either do the 22nd or we could.
That's a
and
Friday before a holiday.
True.
We
There's not a good date then.
We could look at potentially
ugly
combining
month in
one
December, isn't it?
meeting on maybe the 18th in the middle of the month instead. So we have some
Let's
time
look
to
into
think
something
about,
like that,
think
yeah.
about it, but just wanted to at least present the calendar, and then we can put on the calendar to come back in October with a final date for December. Or we could look at by July, having that final date.
Sounds
See,
good.
anyone who has holiday plans that needs to fly can.
Sounds good. I will probably not be here for the April 27th meeting, but other than that, I should plan on being to the rest.
I make a request if we don't have a work session on the November 20th one in advance, it's just too much material.
Yes.
Especially if
Yeah.
we get a packet on the 17th, the night of the
Yep.
17th.
Good call.
We can certainly look at doing that.
We have a blackout date for work sessions.
Sounds good.
Good deal. Okay. Is that everything? I think. Yep.
You need a motion?
For that?
We could bring back, maybe I'll bring back the first meeting or the last meeting in December, a new calendar with a proposed date for.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no.
If that sounds, that way we can throw out a couple ideas and we can decide it. One thing that's helpful about the calendar is it helps applicants know when they're gonna be coming in, so if we do have, we can get those dates kind of finalized, that helps them.
Works for me.
Before we get too far, can we go back just so on 9A, can I get clarity? What did we decide on the 22nd? Is it you're leaving it?
Sounded like maybe leaving it the 22nd?
Okay.
Is
If
that
we
what
have
we wanna
enough.
do?
I think
If
if
we have
John
enough.
could, or I guess even if John can't, if three of us can, which it sounds like we can, because the 21st doesn't work for staff, it sounds like. And maybe the 20.
I don't know about the 20th for you, but
Then it
Natalie
gets-
would
then it
be
gets
able
tight
to
with-
be here.
Yeah, I'm already struggling to find
Yeah.
nighttime daycare for the little one on the 22nd.
So I think it's to try to keep the 22nd unless we can't get a quorum.
Okay. Then just make sure if we have it on the 22nd,
No.
can we push, the firearm ordinance is not going to be here on December 8th, but can you make sure it's not here on December 22nd?
For sure.
Push it to the new year.
For sure.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Good deal. Anything else? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you all.
There's no good height.
Recording stopped.
Not hit it every time I flip a page, but to also get picked up.